we're creating about as many jobs as those other metros combined.
So Bend hates to be compared to Boulder.
We could have a whole hour conversation about this. I think it sets us up another kind of foundation.
Participating. I think that's the difference between being a citizen or sitting on the sidelines.
These conversations are brought to you by the Ladd Group, Bend's leading real estate team. Help continue this Bend Beat conversation by subscribing, sharing, and leaving us a review.
I'm being joined today by Anna Higgins. Our connection and friendship has grown over the last, 2 years as we got the Bend 101 event up off the ground?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I got to know you through that event and your story and the way you approach and give back to this community came out during that last 2 years, and I think it's a story that we need to share. It was new to me. I was unfamiliar with the High Desert Education Service District, things like that, and I think it's a story that would be really good to, one, educate myself, but share it within the communities. So to start, quick bio, and correct me if I'm wrong. The High Desert Education Service District, last 7 years you've been the Director of Innovation, Chief Strategy Officer, and Assistant Superintendent. You're a board member of Looking Forward, Healthy Beginnings, and Opportunity Knocks.
Yeah, just no longer with Opportunity Knocks, just in kind of an advisory role with them.
Okay, well, so obviously you're super involved. I would classify you as an all-star Bend citizen, and I think we need to talk about that. But before we get going, let's talk about your Bend origin story, Central Oregon story. How and when did you arrive on the scene? Were you born here? Or did you move here? Tell me a little bit more.
Yeah, been here coming up on 20 years.
Okay.
My family, so my family of origin, my mom and dad and sisters moved here in the late 90s.
Okay.
So I spent a good portion of the end of high school hanging out. I grew up in Corvallis, but they were starting to move over here, they were building a house over here. So I think I spent a summer or two in between college. So I started to get a feel for Bend pre-Parkway, right? Like that late 90s time was an interesting time for Bend.
Yeah. I mean, Bend at that point was 40, 50,000 people?
Yes.
Maybe?
Yes,
yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you're in Oregon.
Yep, born and raised in Oregon.
Born and raised in Oregon.
Yep.
Okay.
But this is like its own little state on this side.
This is in Oregon?
Yeah.
Okay.
I grew up what we call here in Bend the Valley.
The Valley.
We didn't name it that when we grew up in Corvallis. But so went to school at U of O, met my husband there.
Okay.
He actually came over here first. He worked for Fish and Wildlife.
Okay.
And bopped around and got placed here. So he was here first. So my family, and then he was here. Yeah. And then I followed. They were my people. I was going to be over here. I was a little resistant because I had all kinds of ideas about what this place was. It was I was young then, and it had a brand of, being kind of like a snowboarder, kind of young, casual vibe, lazy.
Yep. Okay.
And I remember showing up on the scene here, and even from Oregon, which is slow in general, the pace was even 20 years ago. I mean, I felt like we were like, Urgh.
You had to slow down to come here.
I don't feel that anymore, but maybe I'm just acclimated.
Yeah, well, I remember feeling that a little bit when I moved from Colorado. But to me, the pace right now is pretty high.
Yeah, it feels that way to me. Energetic, high energy.
High energy, a lot of things happening in all directions. And I think let's get onto that. So before I go into professional, I know you have a couple kids as well, right?
A few.
Okay.
Yes, we are #couple+few.
Couple plus few, okay.
I have 2 middle schoolers and an incoming kindergartner.
Okay.
So yeah, we're busy.
Yeah.
Last year we had children at 3 different schools and doing that thing.
Okay.
This year we're at 2.
Yep.
And we're feeling really good about that. Two school schedules, but 3 really different kids that like to do really different things.
Oh, that's awesome.
Well,
so let's start with the High Desert Education Service District. The how, or the what is it, and the how does it integrate into the educational ecosystem that we have in
Sure.
Central Oregon.
Sure. I often kind of street language around it. I'll call it the regional school district
Okay.
for people that may not know the inner workings.
Okay.
You noted it's service district instead of school district. So
Okay.
we, unlike a Ben Lapine or a Redmond, we don't house K-12 schools.
Okay.
We are truly, as the name says, we are in service to the 4+8+ school districts on this side of the mountains.
Okay.
So we provide kind of soup to nuts. What do districts need
Yep.
that they need an economy of scale for?
Okay.
So if, for example, we provide a lot of special education services. So if we have a student that lives in Bend and has a visual impairment,
Okay.
and there's maybe 2 or 3, I'm not using real numbers here, but 2 or 3 in one district that have those special needs and 3 or 4 in another district.
And they can't staff up.
It
for
just
that.
doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It's not efficient. Those are highly specialized services. So a lot of that stuff lands in our shop. We
Okay.
do driver's education. We do the federal program for migrant education.
Okay.
So it's both like, what do school districts need
Yeah.
that they either don't want to do or it doesn't make sense for them to do individually.
Yeah.
That lands in our shop. And then we are kind of a hub for collaboration.
Okay.
So above and beyond school districts, we are often a bridge between community and school districts. So we have a lot of projects and initiatives like Better Together Central Oregon,
Yeah.
which is a collaborative that focuses on student success from birth to career. And schools can't do it alone. And so
Sure.
it lands in the High Desert Education Service District because of our connections that go outside of the walls of K-12, if you will.
Wow. So it's the gray area. It's that, it's
Pretty
that,
nuanced.
Okay. And things, okay. So tell me more, do all school districts have this, this kind of middle ground and connector of services?
Yeah, ESDs, we call ourselves
Okay.
Education Service
Yeah.
District. That's our acronym. There's 19 of us in the state of Oregon.
Okay.
And we all function a little different, but
Okay.
there's pretty high collaboration amongst our 19
Okay.
in the role that we play in service to our communities and our school districts.
Okay.
So
So how big are you and where does your funding come from for that?
we have about just under 300 core staff.
Okay.
And
Wow.
then we also hire and place all of the substitute teachers
Okay.
for this region. So that's up to about 1,000
Okay.
in a good year.
Yep.
So again, our core team is about 300, but then we have these groups of employees like our substitute
Yep.
teachers, like our language interpreters, like our driver ed instructors
Okay.
who are part of our team,
Yep.
but not included in that 300.
Okay.
We're housed kind of appropriately as a regional entity out of Redmond
Okay.
because
Yep.
of that
Yep.
geographic hub that it is and all the directions
Yeah.
we go.
Okay.
And then our funding is a blend between the state school fund, which is how K-12 districts are funded.
Okay.
We get a portion
Okay.
of that. We also provide services to districts, as I mentioned, and there's a fee for service relationship there.
Okay.
And then we hold many federal, state, and private grants
Okay.
that lift and sustain initiatives.
So how much of your budget every year do you have to go find through grants and things like that that's not a reliable fee for services or provided?
That's I don't know the percentage,
but
I could get that for
it's
you.
probably
but
more than you wish for.
It's different than like a mindset around a nonprofit.
Okay.
Which would be sort of, we don't live and breathe and can activate our mission without grant funds.
Yep.
Often what will happen is there's this thing that either our region wants or the state wants.
Yep.
And they say, who's the most viable organization for this? And they
Okay.
say, High Desert ESD. So it's a different relationship
Okay.
with funding than you might imagine with a nonprofit, for example.
Okay. Interesting. Well, so there's so many things we could talk about, but there is a quote you said where you say, I have my head in the cloud and my feet on the grounds. I dream big, but I get done, right? So let's kind of talk about the two ends of that. What would be your BHAG, right? Your big, hairy, audacious goal that you would love to achieve, but is quite a ways out there. But then what is the stuff that you're proud of that you're getting done on a daily basis, for your district?
Yeah, great question. So we have an innovation arm of our education service district called I for Education. So little I for education.
Okay.
And I've got some big BHAGs there.
Okay.
And then there's stuff happening on the ground. So it's a great example here. I lead that. I started that organization, and it lives within the container of the High Desert ESD.
Okay.
It's in service to both our 300 staff and to our school districts. But what it is sort of trying to, the BHAG here is disrupting the hierarchy of how decisions are made and where innovation is sourced from within education.
Okay.
So what I for Education does, and I'll talk about how it lands on the ground, is regardless of your rank or authority, and education is really hierarchical. That's our system.
Yeah.
And so what this does is it says, regardless of your rank or authority, you have good ideas because you're closest to the problems we need to solve. And we need those ideas. We need to hear about them. We need to test them. We need to design and scale those.
Okay.
So that's what this little nonprofit does that I lead and dreamed up. My big dream would be people know that if you come to Central Oregon, you can expect your schools and your school districts to live and breathe that mentality. That those who are closest to the problems are key decision makers in innovating and iterating and rehabbing the experiences that our students, our children are having in school. So I want that to be true. I want your clients, when they roll into town and want to buy a house, it's because they know the schools are really great here and the teachers are empowered to bring their best ideas forward. So we're bringing that to life. We co-created an innovation process with some local entrepreneurs that you know, the Jim Shells, the Preston Callicotts, the Ron Fritzes of our community, Andy Boyd, Molly Renner. This core team about 5 years ago came together and said, I asked them, what does it look like to bring this crazy idea in the clouds to the ground? And so we co-created a process by which educators can bring ideas forward. And then they iterate on that concept with local entrepreneurs. So they workshop their ideas, and then we move through a human-centered design process and we test those.
Wow, pretty high-end, pretty audacious goals there. That's wonderful. So what
gives me life.
Yeah,
you can feel it.
So you referred to connection with all the people that you just mentioned. I think that's pretty unique about Bend, and I hear it a lot in the business world. But it's interesting to hearing a school education district talking about integration with business leaders and community leaders. Is that unusual for this city? I mean, is that traditional, or how does it? What's that connection with the business world with this school district?
Yeah, again, I'll speak from the education service district, and kind of get some ties to the more traditional. When we think school district, we think Bend the Pine, right? It's in our DNA at the High Desert ESD to connect outside of the walls of our industry. So this cross-sector connection, it is pretty unique. And it's not just us. We have this really this ecosystem here that, whether it's because we're geographically bound or it's just the heartbeat of who we are here, but it's collaboration, right? Even in your industry, it's the name of the game here.
The cross-pollination and how people want to enable other people, regardless if it's business or school districts or whatnot, it's pretty impressive. Yeah,
there's this level of, I'm not gonna sit back passively and hope this is the community I wanna live in.
Sure.
And not just me, but I feel like that's an ethos here. And so we hold that flag in education for this region. That feels that is critically important to us, and we're known, our brand is built around that cross-sector collaboration.
Brian Ladd here. I hope you're enjoying the conversation and find this dialogue relevant to really what it means to live and work and play in this amazing community. As Ben's leading real estate team, we take our role seriously in representing both buyers and sellers at the absolute highest standards of our industry. For more information on how we can help, feel free to visit our website at benpropertysource.com or text LADD1, LADD1 to 88,000.
For people that are newer to our community, how does education fit into our community in a bigger scale? You know, a lot of people think of it, people who have children put their kids in school, the funding goes towards that. It's just a section of the community. How do you see its importance on a bigger scale for those that are maybe newer to the community, they're retired here, don't have kids in the school district? Why is it important to have such a vibrant, school world here in our community?
Well, I mean, I think we all agree that a healthy, thriving educational experience and community elevates and rises all boats for a community's experience. Sure. So, I mean, there's that we all believe that and have believed that a long time.
Yep.
You know, that going back to that BHAG, if this is a place people are coming to,
yep,
because they know that it's a highly engaged experience, not only just if they have children, but that means there's vibrancy in the whole community. There's a high expectation that that the experiences that students have, but those kids and youth are in our community, working here, engaging with us. There's this, again, it's kind of flipping power, but when we as the consumers of education have high expectations, then that entity or that business or that industry meets that. So there's this mutual rising all boats when we have a vibrant, engaged, and then there's tactical. If I'm a business owner, I have a real way in to make an impact for kids. We have a strong integrated internship program through our economic development and our education service district, the chamber system. I mean, there's this really strong belief that none of us can do this alone, and we hold that in education. We can't do this alone. And so you don't have kids, that actually doesn't matter to me. You're part of this community, and so are these students over here. So.
Well,
I don't know if that's an answer that
makes
sense.
No, it makes sense, and it's interesting because I live more in the business world, and what I always hear is how excited people are about collaboration and how everyone's collaboration inspires them to do bigger, better things and then to bring in those that are new. But to hear that go all the way through education is inspiring. It's exciting. But let's talk, growth is not easy. I know you guys have been education in general has been growing rapidly to meet the demands of this growing region. I know the Ben Lapine School District, they've added 15, 18 schools in the last 20 years? I mean, it's almost a school a year, right?
Yeah, it's been really rapid growth.
So that's just an example that I know of, but what are the big growing pains? What would you like people to know where you face your biggest challenges in education right now? That's something that, the town needs, or, the region needs to be aware of.
Yeah. I don't know if it's that different than other industries, right?
Okay.
It's really around workforce.
Yep.
It's around, and what I mean by that, those are real people with high levels of expertise saying yes to working here in our system, in our education system.
Okay. Yep.
I also think there's this post-pandemic recalibration. I don't think, I'm watching it, we're living it.
Okay.
And that's happening in our industry and education as well, to say, we just did this thing. We watched school become something wildly different than it was. We watched services and partnerships and collaborations change overnight because they had to.
Yeah.
And there's some coming back to something that looks a little more familiar, but choice was a huge part of what happened for families and for schools.
Yep.
And there's some recalibration around that of what do I want school to be like now for my kid?
Sure.
And teachers saying, what does school need to be for my students? And so I think the other piece that's really fundamentally changed that we're still playing out and a need is the locus of control around a student or a child's education used to really be within the schoolhouse. It was the teacher,
Yep.
and it was academic student experience, and families were brought into that
Discussion. Yeah.
really like overnight, and they were right next to it. They were an equal partner. So I think what schools and our educational ecosystem need now is for families to continue to engage and help our system be what it is families and kids need. And that it's a simple, not a like kind of put a bow on it, but the futurist in me is just watching this metamorphosed recalibration that's happening between families and community and schools.
Well, yeah, and I've seen it in my own world too.
I bet.
And
Me too.
you know, my wife, like you, specialized in early childhood education. I believe that's what you studied, right?
Early,
Or-
yeah.
Right? And she's got her, you know, own beliefs on the system and whatnot. And I watch her putting my son into public school, and my younger children are homeschool, and what's that integration, and how do we become part of it? But it's an open discussion.
It is, in a way it's never been before.
Yeah.
And I believe deeply in
Yeah.
public schools. I am a champion for public schools.
Mm-hmm.
And they, just like everything here, they are the best versions of themselves when we engage as families and community members to have them reflect both what we need and what our kids need and what we don't even know a future is going to be for them,
Yeah.
right? So high engagement we need, and we need strong, specialized teachers and educators and educational assistants and bus drivers. And I know that sounds petty, but again, to the not sitting back passively, we each have to find a role in making this community thrive and function in the way we want it to.
So I'm a little myopic in the sense that I look at the world through real estate every day. And it's, when I look at housing, I think that's one of the biggest challenges to our city in general. And it's disheartening to me because growth is tough. You know, we were just talking about, you found a trailhead last week in a thunderstorm and it was quiet and you were able to enjoy it like old school Bend, right? Mm-hmm. And we have to soften our edges when the newer people to town are up at the trailheads, or we have to get a permit to hike into South Sister, you know, or whatever. You know, those are trivial lifestyle things, but then there's, you know, more fundamental issues with growth and change as well that are a challenge to us all. But we're at this crossroads where, you know, unfortunately, the average median price of a house right now in Bend is $770,000, and the average median wage can afford a house less than $400. So we're essentially out of workforce housing. We have no available workforce housing, not a shortage, we have none available. How does that affect your ability to serve the students of our region?
Significantly. When I think about workforce, I think about that is kind of intrinsically linked, unable to detangle from the housing. We're having a very hard time hiring for our lower wage positions, and they're critical. They're part, again, of our little ecosystem. We can't function without bus drivers and educational assistants that are supporting students with special needs. We need the full spectrum, and our workforce house, if we're getting myopic, like you just put the numbers on the table, we're hitting that brick wall. Yeah. And I don't think we're at a point where it's a coming crisis anymore. The typhoon has hit. It is an absolute critical crisis in town. And, you know, I'm even speaking with people that are getting hired by the hospital that are doctors that are not sure they can live here. You know, we've reached this point with housing costs, and it's
we are absolutely at a junction where businesses cannot grow. The ecosystem that created the Bend that it is today, they can't grow, they can't hire in this environment, or we can't educate our children.
I mean, this is where I start to see like the fundamental infrastructure breakdown. I don't mean to sound like an alarmist, but
I'm there with you.
it's, our everyday experience, whether it's what it looks like in a school building,
Yep.
and the operations of getting your kids on a school bus or trying to go out to dinner, and the place that you were expected to go just isn't there, or they have one server. So we are shifting around this infrastructure, people's willingness to engage in an infrastructure or ability to engage in the infrastructure because they can't live here. I'm really, I'm taking it very seriously, and I do even listen to myself. I feel like an alarmist, but we're in it. It is pouring down on us. It is affecting an infrastructure we took for granted.
Let's bring this full circle and talk about our experience and the experience with people that are newer to town, grappling with the needed growth that we need to have. Because without question, we are short housing. We're short apartments. We're short all the middle, the middle of the ladder housing, condos and townhomes and single family. We need more of everything. And I'm not I like to think of myself as an environmentalist, and I like careful planning, but without housing, we're at a really critical junction. And I think we've actually passed that junction, and it's a crisis. How do we have that conversation with people that are newer to town? Because I did a webinar about housing costs, whatnot, and someone wrote in as a question, what makes people think they can work and live in the same community? Is that a right that they deserve to have? And it was just shocking to me that someone would have that thought, but their version of Bend is they moved here and it's an outdoor mecca, retirement town, whatever it might be, and it's a picture in time and they want it to stay the way it is. I guess, where do we go with that conversation? How do we help understand, create empathy for the situation that we have right now?
I think fundamentally there's a mindset and a heart set around inclusion.
Inclusion.
Yeah.
Yep.
This and the opposite of that would be, I'm here now and everything needs to stop and center around my experience here.
Yep.
So for me, that's how I am making sense of it, is I have a fundamental core value around inclusion and community.
Yep.
And I think that, and that's a mindset and a heart set, and it informs the way we build relationship, the way we treat each other, the way we take pause when we are headed into this us versus them, those people, the language around those people from California. For me personally, it butts up against a core value, which isn't okay for me. It's out of alignment for me to say those people. And so what does that mean in every day when the drill is happening behind my door?
Yep.
Right? It's understanding that I came here too. And someone, my house was built and someone had, so it's this taking pause, recentering humanity and community, and again, a core value around inclusion. And I don't know how that's so personal. I don't know how we scale that, but that would be a BHAG for me, is to have a community that instead of demonizing people that are new to a space, we don't pretend it's not hard. It is hard, and we have to make some hard decisions together, but they have a right to being here as much as I do, even though I've been here for 20 years. So
what you just said was probably my favorite 30 seconds of the dozens of hours of podcasts that we've done. And I'm going to go back and find that language. But what you said of, it needs to start with the mindset and the heart set around inclusion. And I think that was pretty impactful. And I hope we can spread that message.